2, 3. Hello, Spencer Barksdale. Lovely to have you on the show.
Well, hello, Lauren Yates. It's lovely to be here.
Well, I'm just so delighted to have the entity that is you on our show, because you have a very special, unique perspective on the world, and I'm just so excited to share that with people. First of all, we were just chatting before, and so you're up in Sharon, which is just north of New York, right?
Yep, it's the northwest corner.
Okay, and
of Connecticut.
And you've been there for the lockdown period. It looks like a beautiful area to be in. And today you said you went to a protest. Can you describe that?
Yes, it's, as the world struggles really with racism and the pandemic and the consistent struggles that we go through as people, I have just found that for myself, certainly there have been struggles, but I have not struggled as much as so many people in the world. And I've just felt so sad and angry. And so I just wanted to participate in it. It's strange because where I am in this northwest corner of Connecticut, it's primarily a lot of, New Yorkers who have little country houses and places like that. And it's a wonderful community. There's great artists up here, and just not only artists that came from New York or whatever, but artists who were born here and have a history here, whether they're a metal worker or they do woodworking. I mean, it's just such a wonderful community, and it was so great to be able to go, even though it was very, very small, because the town itself is small. It was just nice to get out there and be a part and feel it. When I might date myself a little bit, but the first time I took ecstasy, when it was like, ooh, it sent all those chills up your spine, and you're like, whoa, this is great. Once we started chanting the names of the different people who had been affected by the police and the circumstances that were beyond their control, it just sent that same glimmer of hope, I guess, and that excitement of hope that really encouraged. It really encouraged me, and I give a lot of, I respect the people who coordinated it and built it and believed in it, and who are making this community feel a part of it and believing in it as well.
I think the idea of community is really important, like such a word that keeps coming up in my kind of sphere, and I feel like it's the way forward, small community, and as white people too, I think this, there's it depends on who you are and where you're from, but this whole what's happened in the last 2 weeks with the brutal murder of George Floyd, for a lot of people it's traumatic. It brings up a lot of old wounds that continue to traumatize. For some people, for white people, it might be an opportunity for education. It might be an opportunity to open up your heart to something that you might not have been conscious of before, and it might be an invitation to discover a bit more about yourself and the world around you. And for some people, it's confusing and scary, which, like, someone who, like me, who's probably a bit more left-swinging, someone who's grown up mixed race, and who has a husband who is very passionate about Black culture and the issue of racism itself. Like, I can't understand the argument against racism, but it's a logical argument for some people. So I feel like my hope out of all of this is like that people just open their hearts and just feel something that they might not have been aware of before. And to me, that's the way forward. But it has been a very traumatic period for a lot of people. But I think we can't, there's this saying in Buddhism, like, no mud, no lotus. So that, you need, without this thick layer of mud, a beautiful lotus can't bloom from that mud. So I keep thinking about that saying right now, no mud, no lotus. But I want to know about how you came to be who you are today. Let's go from the very beginning.
I guess my dad didn't wear a condom that day. But I just the no mud, no lotus. I've never heard that expression actually, and thank you for sharing that with me, because that is so beautiful. It really is. And I think, to your point, it's brought up fear, it's brought up concern, it's brought up so many different variables within yourself that, as long as you keep communicating it and trying to understand it, I think we will be better. We will be better for it.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, the conversation that we're having, because I grew up in a little town called Petersburg, Virginia, which is on the East Coast, and it's just below Richmond, Virginia, which was the capital of the Confederacy. So, and growing up within that vernacular, honestly, I was so oblivious of it, and it's a history of families being oblivious to it, that how it kind of was just a part of it, where certainly the Confederacy was celebrated.
Wow.
And as a child and even a teenager, I didn't really understand exactly, what it was all about, other than like, yeah, okay, and it's just, and then thinking about it now is like, oh shit, it's not okay, but it was, so there are so many people in that area that are, they see the Confederacy as history, and as a history that helped build what families built back then. And not allowing myself to be aware of the knowledge of what it was all about, that's on me, of like, well, I didn't learn about it, and so I just kept moving on. But so that's very strange too. There's in Richmond, there's this thing called Monument Avenue with all the monuments,
right.
Of Robert E. Lee, and it was a thing of beauty, because these statues and sculptures are magnanimous, and you look at them as like, oh, wow, look how beautiful the horse is, and look how big his nuts are. I mean, it's like but you don't really I didn't realize what it was saying, and so now that they are talking about removing the statues and things like that, I mean, if it's hurtful towards people, then let's talk about how we can either remove them or how we can create something next to it that shows the juxtaposition of what it's done to other people and maybe a fusion. I don't know if you can even fuse the Confederacy, but how you could create something that shows the dichotomy and shows where we are heading as people. But it was a very, it was the town I grew up in was pretty small. I was telling somebody the other day, and I'm just going on to a totally different path.
Fine.
That where we went to high school, or where my high school was from like first grade all the way to 12th grade. I had like 21 people in my graduating class. It's quite small. You knew everybody,
Quaint.
right? Yes, very quaint. And there was a Pizza Hut that we used to go to near my school, and we would go to the rock pile behind the Pizza Hut because literally there was an X-rated drive-in theater next to it, and we could go and get some glimpses of nudity and throw rocks at cars. It's just and drink beer.
Wow.
So.
So
it was,
random.
Completely. And it was like, how come our parents didn't say anything about this X-rated drive-in theater that was out there? But, we used to pile in cars and like go in and everybody would be slumped down in the seats. So
they probably were going to it, so they didn't like speak a word. The parents were probably all there, so they probably didn't say anything.
Exactly. They had their wigs on and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
It was a very small town, but a small town can bring such wonderful, interesting, creative opportunities because you are in a small town. And if you have friends who are creative too, you make home movies, you do all sorts of crazy, wacky shit. I mean, did you grow up in a small town or?
Well, I didn't. I grew up in Sydney, which is like, it's like, one of the biggest cities in Australia, but Australia in itself is like a small town. It's an island, and it's definitely very white. Like the school I went to had zero black people, which was like a real culture shock for me coming from Thailand. I came from like a school in Thailand that was full of like expats and kids from all over the world, like Fiji and Korea, and it was a very mixed race school. And then I came to Australia. I had to wear a uniform, and and then I don't know why. I think my parents just like didn't know, they didn't know much about Australia, so they were like okay, well, you guys can go to an all girls school. Whoa, like that was probably one of the biggest culture shocks I've ever had in my whole life. Being in an all female environment is really weird. Like there's no situation that you would have like that in life, right? Like being
Right.
surrounded by just all the same sex just every day for like 10 years. So yeah, it was a real head spin. And then like a lot of cultural shocks, like there was like a bunch of racism, but white fragility. So like if I brought up the fact that I felt that people were being outright racist, there was a real like don't you kind of like a don't you dare say that about me, and like there was an automatic like I'm going to put you down for making me feel uncomfortable about being racist. So it was a real interesting place. But it definitely gave me a lot of opportunities because Australia is like paradise at the end of the world. It's like there's weird animals and like there's beautiful nature and like so and the Aboriginal culture, the original peoples of the land, they have such beautiful ways of passing down history. They call so the way they pass down Aboriginal people pass down history is verbally, and they call it the dream time. And that is, they're telling stories about, how they're like, I guess it's their version of maybe mythology or, creation stories of, how things in nature was formed or how things evolved to become a certain way. But it was really like, I found it really creative and beautiful in itself. And yeah, so I think the thing that I really got that made shape who I was from living in Australia was more like being in nature, in the weird nature out there, like fishing and surfing and figuring out like, if I'm a weirdo or if I'm just very different from people here. So yeah, but yeah, so I can relate to a lot of things that you're saying about growing up for sure. Yeah.
I can relate to you too. I actually went to a college at an all-male school.
Oh, what was that like?
Well, I had really, I certainly had some good guy friends in high school, but I just loved the girls, I mean, they were so fun. They were crazy. They had a great sense of humor. My sister, who is 18 months older than me, her group of friends were just fantastic, So I feel sorry. I mean, I have four siblings. I mean, three other siblings, but my poor sister, because I was literally just wanted to tag along with her all the time, But I wasn't. I guess I did all right in school, but my mother said that I was lazy, so I really didn't put that much into it, I guess. So one of the only schools I got into was this all-male school, and I hate to say that it was sort of like, at that time, perceived a little bit like, oh, they have great parties. So I was like, okay, I'll get there.
That's fine.
And yeah, I think to my mother and father's, to their disappointment, I didn't really put my attention to school there. However, I developed an amazing group of male friends, that I hadn't had before, that as large, and where I went to school in Virginia, it's kind of strange, which maybe was similar to your situation. There were women's schools, only women's schools all the way all around as well. So we would travel, back and forth, all the time to the different, women would come to our school, we would go to their school. So there was a constant drunk driving experience going on there, that wasn't that great. But it was an interesting place. It was great to be away from the town where I grew up because I learned about music. And, that's when, it was, let's see, I was in school in 82 to 86. So, there was some great alternative 80s music going on during that time. And, it just opened myself up to a wide range of things. And I realized that I wanted to keep moving on, and I wanted to keep doing something different. When I graduated from college, my parents were sort of like, so what are you going to do? And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I was like, well, I'm going to go to the beach, and they were like, okay, well, how are you going to afford your beach? And I was like, dumbfounded. I was like, well, what are you talking about? Y'all are going to help, And they were like, no. And they both said, you're going to start working for your father on Monday. So I
Whoa.
was like, sad clown, but shoot, sorry. Uh, that was actually an old friend who has resurfaced from school that I went to. Um,
Mm.
so I lived in Richmond, Virginia for a little while after school. And then I got it after I, my father was probably the best boss ever. He was just so sweet and giving and supportive. But, they totally believed in their children working very hard,
Mm.
and especially a boy, so I had to get right to work. But then I did end up getting a job as a creative director for a video production company in
Whoa.
Richmond, but it was tiny, and so that taught me a little bit. And I started writing scripts for them and things like that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I
Mm.
think I got fired. I'm not 100% sure, but there was this thing called the Big Flea Market in Richmond, and we had the account, and I don't know how it came up, but I decided that I could draw the flea for the flea market commercial, and literally it looked like a pimple with legs, kind of. And so I was like, I mean, I knew it wasn't good, but I don't think the client liked it very much. So moved on from that. But and then New York was just sort of calling me.
Mm.
We were not big travelers as a family because we didn't really, my parents, they didn't really want to fly very much. And so so we drove all the time, and who wants to drive in a fucking station wagon with 4 annoying children in the back? But I remember one time we went up to New Hampshire and we passed by New York City, and I was just like, that's where I want to be.
Wow.
And I ended up dating this woman before I was 100% clear that yes, I was gay, and this is who I am, and I'm not going to change it. And she was amazing. And speaking of old bands, we were hanging out at her apartment, and the drummer from the Psychedelic Furs lived
Whoa.
next door. So he came over and hung out with us, and I was just like, I got to get here.
Wow.
My girlfriend at the time ended up moving back to Richmond, but then I moved to New York, and that kind of started just as far as opening your eyes to
Mm.
life and just encouraging diversity and meeting wildness. That was the start.
So that was like New York in the late 80s?
Yes, I
Mm.
moved there in '89,
Yeah.
and
And so, like, what did you do? Like, you just like moved to New York and like you were like, "Hi guys, I'm here."
yes, and I hope my cousin isn't going to watch this, but he was dating this woman at the time, and I ended up meeting them for lunch or something like that, or a drink or something. And she was fascinating. She grew up in New York City. She grew up on Park Avenue. She was very well educated. She loved, she was all into books and things like that. And I was like, whoa, she's amazing, and my cousin, I loved, we're very similar with our senses of humor and stuff like that. And, I kind of, I called. So he was living in New York at the time too. And instead of calling him, I called her and said, hey, I've lost Chris's number. Do you have it? And she gave me his number. And I was like, because I'm thinking about moving to New York, but I kind of need to find a place to live. And she was like, absolutely not. You will stay with us.
There
And
we go.
so I moved to 65th and Park, and completely And so sorry, Chris. I mean, still I love you, but that is I manipulated myself into this situation. And then I ended up meeting this woman who worked for this very small PR firm called Mitchell Manning. And it was this older man who he had been friends with Audrey Hepburn, the Lauders from Estee Lauder, and he was, well, you couldn't marry men back then. So he had a partner who was younger. And, so I think they clearly knew I was gay. So and I think there was this, I have a little bit of a Southern accent. So they were like, let's get this Southern accent boy on the phone and who will answer the phone. And the people that they used, their clients and things like that, they would say, oh, well, where'd you get the Southern guy, And, but from there we did PR for restaurants around the city. So like the 21 Club and we would put at that time, it was all about the gossip columns. So we would get, say, a famous person went to one of our restaurants, one of the restaurants, and you would read that in Page 6 or Susie from WWD and, all these things. So we would pitch stories to the different,
that's a real thing about the American culture. It's very PR heavy, I think, even now.
Yes.
Just in the fashion industry, it's very much about who's wearing your clothes, and rather than maybe for example, of course it's still, important, but rather than having your clothes in editorials, and more publications, this is more about, in America, I find it's really about, there's this really glamorous celebrity culture that, it's all about who's wearing your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of gotten out of control, don't you think? I mean, and then with the, and it's developed, I feel like, then developed all these influencers, that whole culture, and so then it's just keeps spinning and spinning. And now we have, seeing the different people on TikTok, and all the different apps.
Yeah. Yeah, don't get me started about TikTok. I can't believe I can't believe that TikTok just blew up because it's a surveillance instrument of China. So it's what? Everyone's just suddenly jumped on the TikTok bandwagon, and it's just I'm so confused. 1 minute they're like, oh, let's stop all Americans using Huawei phones because it's, a surveillance instrument of Beijing. But TikTok's fine. Let's get into that.
Let's all dance together. I mean, when my nephew was here, I was in Connecticut when the pandemic really hit, and I just adore my nieces and my nephew, and so he came to stay with me for a few weeks, and he does engage in it a little bit. So we did a couple videos, that were kind of just foolish and fun, and I don't even think of that shit, about who's watching me or whatever. It's just let's put a goofy thing on.
Maybe it's kind of funny that China's oh, let's use this as a tool of surveillance, and then all they get is stupid teenagers doing
Exactly. And old people trying to look like young teenagers. Yeah. I mean, they're okay, we've really got something here. We nailed it this time.
Oh my God. Yeah, so good. The world is just wild right now. So you were in PR, and then how did that, how did you go from that into the fashion industry?
So Okay, being on the 65th and Park Avenue, so it was a big building. There were doormen and things like that. I mean, I had never been experienced anything like that. And I started going downtown, and downtown was really where I felt like, ooh, I'm finding some really fun people. And then the doormen started saying, like, I would get in at around, like 6 a.m. or something, which isn't even that late sometimes. And I would locked myself out, or they would always be like, it's always you, and I was like, maybe that's a good sign I should move downtown or something.
Yeah.
So, a girlfriend of mine worked for this brand called Nicole Miller, which is a little fashion brand, was around for a while. And she, I'm going to say, she let me borrow a necktie from Nicole Miller from the store. And because I wanted to wear something that had a little bit more attitude to it, I just felt like where I came from, it was very preppy, And so Nicole was doing these kind of conversational prints, really 80s. I mean,
Nice.
wide silk.
tie.
That's exactly, then it had a little bit of an interesting shine to them. And, but I felt like, whoa, this is it. I love it, and so I started wearing it to work. And, so I took her to a party downtown. We went to this University of North Carolina party that I knew some people who were having down there. So certainly it wasn't going to be that diverse of a crowd. But Elizabeth and I went down there, and we were kind of checking out all the people. And there was a guy in some Doc Marten shoes. And so we were like, he's the one that we have to talk to. And so they ended up creating an evening partnership, if you get my drift. And so he and I then became friends. And he worked for this record label called TVT Records.
Right.
And I was like, oh, cool. And I met this varied assortment of people through my friend Joe, and he and Elizabeth didn't really click, but Joe and I clicked, and so we started like hanging out quite a bit, and through him and through this record label, I met this woman, Terrell, and she was just, she was from California. She was so interesting. She had a great sense of humor. We just totally clicked, like total brother, sister, stuff. And at one point she said to me, my friend Mary's moving to New York and she's a fashion designer. And I was like, wow, I was just freaked out by it, and she's like, y'all are going to get along so well together. And I was, sometimes you're like, yeah. Okay, sure we are. But we got along like two peas in a pod. I mean, it was just crazy. And Mary was working for this small company called Heather Hill Sportswear. She worked in the Empire State Building. The main offices, I swear, were like on the 5th floor. And then the design office, which was literally a railroad, like a railroad room, was on the 14th floor. So, they got a new piece of CAD equipment, computer aided design. We had, Heather Hill sold, I think, to like Walmart, Kmart, those sorts of brands. So we would have to sell on presentation boards where, you would have one striped shirt that would come in 6 different stripes. So I would have to do those and, do the different colorations and like cut them out and stuff like that. So,
did you guys have to analyze the colors of the stripe, like in real detail, like to like break down which color might sell the best and which was the most like politically strategic?
Well, I think there was certain thinking of that. I think we were so interested in going out at that time that, Mary would kind of get in around 11 in the morning and she would have an egg and a bacon, egg and cheese sandwich. And our boss, Richard, he was Swedish, and he would have us say, "Tu vas snäll vias dumas," which I don't think I'm saying it right, but he had a joke like he would make us say, you are smart, we are stupid when we would come in the day. And then in the middle of the day, we would all take a nap. I mean, it was probably the best place to work
Yeah,
forever.
sounds awesome.
It was amazing. Yes, it was great. I remember one day I think I wore a sweater tucked into my pants, and this other designer who was on the 5th floor said, nobody ever does that. And I was like, it's okay. But and then at that time, and that you and I had also mentioned that guy with the Doc Martens, he ended up moving to Atlanta to be in the record industry down there. And he was like, "Do you want my room?" I live in this apartment way downtown. It was like it was on Greenwich and Spring. I mean, it's not even Soho. It was like west of Soho. And he was like, "Do you want to rent the room in my apartment?" I was kind of sick of living on the Upper East Side, and everybody was fantastic. I think some of our roommates there were beginning to start moving around too, and so we may have all just dispersed. But I ended up taking the room from my friend Joe, which was literally probably the darkest box I've ever been in. I mean, thank goodness depression wasn't a big thing with me then, because literally I would have been, on the rumpled bed on the floor and never gotten out of the room. And then another one of my roommates, Steve, literally lived in a closet that had a loft built on like a top, so he could have his clothes under it and he could sleep in it. And literally, it was a tiny closet. And then we lived with Jonathan Larson, who wrote Rent.
Yeah,
And,
when you told me that, I went back to listen to a bunch of the Rent musical songs, and that they just I'm pretty sure they were playing, all through my childhood. Those songs are awesome, and I feel like the Rent kind of the storyline is just so relevant, no matter what time period you're in. Yeah.
And, Jonathan and I, we weren't too close of pals or anything, because I think he thought I was a total idiot, which I am still, and I'm sure I was then, and I was a little bit party boy. All I wanted to do was go out, and have fun. And he was really working on his craft, and we had a bathtub, and, we had a shower in the kitchen. I mean, it was all very typical, old New York stuff that you hear about, artist loft in a way. And Jonathan had the apartment for quite some time. So, certainly he felt an ownership to the apartment. And that was never anything that I had ever dealt with before. Like when I lived in Richmond or anywhere else, an apartment was what everybody participated in. It wasn't like, oh, you're just renting a room here. So I probably agitated him a little bit on that front. And I was like, that music is shit, and I was just, so I don't know if he may have been writing some of Rent during my stay there, but I wasn't really a proponent of it. And however, I look at it now and I'm like, here's this guy who believed in himself 100%, and that is so important.
Yeah.
He didn't give it up. He didn't give up. I mean, it's unfortunate that he passed away, I think the night of dress rehearsal. But, and then it became this crazy, it became this crazy,
like a
point of view of
yeah.
the cultural point of view. And, it's just like, wow,
So
I can't
powerful.
believe. Yeah. And he was on that Casio computer with his headphones on all the time when he wasn't working at this place called the Moonlight Diner. So in hindsight, I wish I had realized that there was talent in front of me, and maybe I should have given some respect to that talent, but instead I gave my respect to nightclubs and things like that. But anyways, but then the same Mary that I was mentioning to you, she had seen an ad for an assistant designer at Levi's, and she's originally from California as well. And so while we were working at Heather Hills, she said, "Oh, I'm going to apply for this job," and I said to her, I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I send in my resume for it too?" Because they're either going to want someone like you who's actually got a lot of experience, been to school for it and stuff like that, or maybe they're going to be looking for just kind of a paper pusher or something like me, kind of, And she was so cool. She was like, "Absolutely," So we both interviewed one night. Do you remember the movie Tootsie?
No. Tell me.
It's with Dustin Hoffman, where he is trying to get a job in the acting community, and so he ends up dressing up as a woman, and he becomes this big player on this soap opera. So it's a very funny movie. Like Jessica Lange is in it. I mean, it was, I don't know when Tootsie came out, but we were. Anyways, I was watching it with a girlfriend of mine. It was on VHS, so we were watching it at home. This is when I lived on Bleecker between 10th and Christopher, and literally the drag queens would sit under my window at night and kiki together. And I was in this really small, cramped room. But my friend Sheila and I were watching Tootsie. Phone rang. My other roommate, who burnt my TV, by the way, but said he didn't because he just shoved a statue over it. And but anyways, he said the phone was for me, and I was baked. I was so stoned, and so then he goes, this woman. And she was foreign, and she said, "Oh, hi, this is blah, 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 from Levi Strauss and Company," and I'm wasted, I'm like, and Tootsie's in the background, and she kept going, "Is this an okay time to reach you?" And I was like, yes, great, sure, and she kept sensing this sarcasm in my voice, and she goes, "Okay, what is going on? Are you sure this is okay time to reach you?" And I go, "Actually, it is a fine time to reach me." I said, "You know what? I did apply for a job at Levi Strauss and Company." And I said, "And if this was Levi Strauss and Company, I would be going insane because I totally want to work there and stuff like that." I said, "However, I think you're my friend Mary's sister, Angelina, who's an actress, and you're fucking with me." And there was quiet on the phone. There was silence. And she goes, "Well, this is Moreta Wimmer from Levi Strauss and Company." And I was just like, oh my God. But the woman was so cool because she was like, "Here's this crazy motherfucker, and he's taking me through this crazy scenario that I've never experienced before." And also, she was like, "Also, the weirdest thing is I have a resume for Mary Bruno right here, too." So she had both of our resumes. So anyways, Mary and I moved out to California together. We took a trip cross country, which if you have, I mean, Australia is vast. Have you ever taken a trip cross country?
I mean, no, but Yeah, I've done like, all up the East Coast. I used to be in like a little band. I used to play the cello for like a folk band. And like, yeah, we do the touring circuit where like you go up the East Coast in a little minivan. But if you were to go across from like east to west of Australia, I mean, it's not as big as the US, but that would take you a solid, like, I want to say like 4 or 5 days. Just driving solid.
Yeah. I mean, I went to Australia for a month and I kind of wanted to get to Perth, but I was like,
oh, God.
I can't do it. But when you were in your band, so did you write music?
Yeah, I'd write all the cello parts and we'd like some songs we'd write together, but usually like the lead, his name was Brian Campo. He was Canadian, but he was playing and making music in Australia. And he's still there now. But, yeah, like it was like a fun time. I think like in the early 2000s, folk music was a real like thing. Then like it took like a few years, then it completely fizzled out and then I was out of a job. so then I went to art school. But anyway.
Do you want to sing us a little bit of something? Because maybe folk music's probably coming back.
I won't sing anything on the podcast, but I'll dig it up and I'll post you. I'll post and I'll send you some of the video clips that we made. That was like really DIY homemade video clips. There was one video clip we made that was abseiling, literally. Like the other lead singer, Alana, she's a very well respected jazz singer in Australia, and she was like, "Hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if the video clip was us abseiling in the Blue Mountains," which is like a really famous set of mountains. And Brian was like, okay. And I was like, okay, I'll film it. Like, I'm not like, you guys, you do that and I'll film it for you. And on the first descent down, Brian like completely smashed his ankle and then he was stuck in mid-air off a rock face, and like to this day his ankle is still like fucked up, but I'm sorry, Brian, but like it made some quality art that not many people saw. Sorry.
Okay, I've got to see these pictures. Yes. I'm really curious about the hairstyles, maybe, and also the clothing as well.
It was kind of like mountain man abseiling, singing. You're gonna love it.
Wow, that sure is an interesting mix. Yeah. I think you're gonna see it on Tom Ford next.
Yeah, I know, right?
Something.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what happened at Levi's?
Well, so I did. Okay, actually, Mary and I both got a job within 2 weeks of each other. Yeah, it was fantastic. Awesome. And I was CAD manager and t-shirt designer. So I really didn't, and of course it was the history of Levi's and the history of denim is phenomenal. And it's so fascinating. And the cloth itself is just one of the most unique cloths I can think of ever having worked with, because you can do so much to it and you can design so much around it. But I was just kind of getting my feet wet really in the industry. And the woman who I mentioned to you who hired me, she was really kind of, San Francisco, so many kooky, crazy people. And, it was such a fun time. I mean, I remember one time at Levi's, this friend of mine had given me a cape for my birthday, and there were like a group of us kind of walking around the Levi's. It was called the hard park and the soft park. And so I was like waving around in this crown and this cape. I mean, it's just crazy shit. But it was like, it showed me that I can be whoever I want to be. You know, I can be me, actually. And that was the thing that this industry provided for me, is it provided an outlet for finally, like, okay, Spencer can be Spencer. You know, it's like, you be you. Hey, as long as you do the work, you know, as long as you get it done, as long as we sell stuff, you know, it's going to be cool. And so it gave me hope, you know, and it gave me satisfaction and of like, wow, there are other opportunities out there other than, I think something is dying, maybe. I mean, not me right now, but I keep hearing something going.
So where were we?
All right, so we were at
Levi's cape stories.
Story, and then I also did want to tell you one quick story before I moved to Levi's. I mean, New York was pretty crazy, you know. I mean, I never particularly saw it as dangerous, but I guess there were certainly dangerous areas and stuff like that. And you know, we were all hanging out in the East Village at that point. That, you know, you really, at least our group, we didn't really go past Avenue B, you know. But like, have you ever heard of this bar, Max Fish?
Yes.
That had started up, and so we were totally, I mean, Max Fish was amazing because it was a community of all different sorts of people. And, you know, it didn't really seem like, it was kind of one of the first places where it wasn't like it's all straight or it's all gay. It was the mix of like whatever floats your boat. So fun. But I also started started going to nightclubs, of course, too. And one time I came to a nightclub, Danceteria, that had kind of moved around a little bit, but it was like on Madison at I think it was like Park and 24th or something like that. And I got out of the club at, I don't know, 5 a.m. or something like that. And I was walking down the street, and as I was walking down the street, I saw that there was a phone booth, you know, and there were two people in the phone booth. And, you know, I was like, okay, somebody's having some phone booth fun, you know. And so as I was walking past them, the guy goes, hey, give me a quarter. And, you know, I was like, yeah. So I kept sort of walking by, and he pulled out a gun, and he goes, I said, give me a quarter. So I oh, wait a minute. I think I might have something in my pocket. And I literally pulled out all these coins. He fished through the coins, took a quarter, and then I just kept moving on. And then I was like, taxi. I mean, so it was a crazy experience.
Yeah.
But so New York was there was so much that was unexpected about it, you know, within, I guess, expectations of what you thought it was. But anyway, so I had, unfortunately, when I was living in San Francisco, my father passed away. And this was very, you know, even though it was only 3 hours distance, you know, it was really tough, you know, and it was hard to be away from my family. It had been difficult knowing that he had lung cancer, so going through cancer and struggling with that for a little bit of time. You know, I wasn't really there for him, or at least I felt, you know, whereas the rest of my family was really a united front with him right there. And so that happened. And then and I missed the East Coast. You know, I love the change of the weather, and just so much about it. And I really missed, and I missed New York City,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And we had to go cross country. My father had given us his aunt's 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. that was that
That
was
sounds like a
green.
hamburger to me.
It seemed like a roasting hamburger the entire time we were in it going cross country. But we called it the Mary E because that was my great aunt's, her name was Mary Elizabeth. And so as I was going through the Holland Tunnel to go down to my parents' house, and that's where my friend Mary and this other woman, Caroline, met me down in Virginia. I was driving the Mary E through the Holland Tunnel and I started crying and I was like,
Mm,
I know I'm going to be back here.
mm,
So circling back, I ended up somehow getting an interview at Tommy Hilfiger. And while I was working at Levi's and I was coming back, as you probably know the stages of where you go through where, oh my God, everybody's getting married now. So I'm going to all these weddings. And so there were all these weddings that summer. And so I was able to go back and I was able to sort of stay a couple extra days. And I went up to New York to interview at Tommy Hilfiger. And I mean, it happened like that. It was, I've never had an interview process like that, but I met with Tommy's sister, Jenny, and we totally hit it off. And then next thing I know, she was like, you need to meet this person in production. So I met her, and it's just also mayhem. We're talking like 93. Okay. So Tommy Hilfiger was beginning to bang it
yeah,
out of the ballpark.
yeah,
It was just nuts, with like Tommy jeans and stuff like
yeah.
that. So they needed a designer for Tommy jeans. And so I interviewed with them. And then the next day they were like, can you come meet Tommy? And so I was like, oh, shit. Okay. So I met him, super nice guy. And I told him about that story in the Mary E going through the Holland Tunnel. And I don't know, it somehow clicked with him.
Oh,
And they gave me the job.
wow.
So I flew back. It was when there was no occupancy of apartments in the city at all. Literally, and I hate to say it because it sounds some ageist, but I'm old enough now that I can maybe you say it. But I was asking old people on the street if they knew of an apartment because I thought maybe they'd had a friend, somebody who just passed away, and could get could give me an apartment. But also, the guy in the Doc Martens, I think, had moved back to New York. And so we all went out one night, and I was like, I am not going to ask anybody about a fucking apartment in New York City. I'm just sick of it. And Joe said, hey, does anybody have an apartment that Spencer could rent? And this woman said, well, I'm living at this place, right? It's just below Washington Square Park. She was like, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to move. I don't know. I may move with my mom back up to the Upper West Side or what. I don't even remember her name, but bless her. And so I was like, well, do you think I could just come look at the apartment just to see? And I don't know. And totally taking that move again. And so she goes, all right, this apartment, I mean, she was paying, I think, $900 a month. And it was rent stabilized. And it was bigger than anything that I had seen. I mean, rents around that time for like a one bedroom were like 1,300,
Mm,
1,500, which for me was an enormous amount of money.
yeah.
It's like, I can't pay that amount of money. And I wanted to live by myself.
Mm,
And somehow the woman, she called me a couple days later and she said, you know what, I'll move out. The landlords didn't even raise the rent.
wow.
And so I've been in that apartment now for 22 years.
Oh, wow. Same
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, I'm really not good with kind of moving at all. I don't know. Are
Oh, it's
you?
painful. Yeah, it's real painful. Just like, I don't know, if you're comfortable in a place, like, I'm the kind of person I don't need much to be happy. So, if I like a spot and the community, I think the community where you are is like super important. If I can be part of a community, then I'm happy there,
Yeah.
Right?
And growing up in small towns, you
Mm,
kind of you're open to communities.
yeah.
You're open to the people who work at the grocery store. You're open to the people who work at the gas stations.
Yeah.
You're just
Yeah.
you're open to the people at the Pizza Hut who let you go to their like rock pile and watch the porn.
Yeah. By the way,
You
Pizza
know,
Hut was my first ever job when I was 14.
really.
Yeah, I was greasing all the pans and they'd be stacked up high and like every so often a pan would have like a family of cockroaches in it. Oh, good memories.
Okay.
I still have a burn from the oven from my first job somewhere. It's like a
Wow. I
tattoo.
mean, yeah, completely. I do have a kind of a gross roach story if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Okay, so here I am in this apartment that I'm telling you about, and I think I may have been working at Tommy Hilfiger at that point, or either I had my own line at that point, and I was sleeping in bed, and my bed is like, it's a one bedroom, but literally they put up a wall, and a queen size bed can fit in this cubby hole, kind of. So I'm sleeping, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, I feel something. I'm like, and I'm like, and I go back to bed because I always sleep with an air conditioner on because I love the sound and I need air. So I was like, oh, it's just air conditioner. And so then a little bit later, I felt it again on my face, and I was like, and so I went back to sleep. And then the third time I woke up, and there was something in my mouth. I pulled, and I was like, roach! It's a roach. I smacked it up.
Oh, that I think that's
Like,
like literally my worst nightmare ever.
well, you know what? If it happens, just know it's not going to hurt you, and just kill it.
Protein. I have eaten grasshoppers before, fried grasshoppers. I mean, in Thailand we eat not some people, especially from upcountry, like, fried bugs is a delicacy. And
Yeah,
honestly,
I think so too, right?
fried cricket tastes like prawns. I kid you not. If you closed your eyes and you ate a fried cricket, you would think that you were eating a fried prawn. I feel like they're probably very genetically close or something, but
Uh-huh.
like it gave me a whole new perspective on seafood.
Maybe,
But
maybe we could start a crickets and prawn restaurant chain or
yeah,
something.
yeah, sure. I mean,
Uh, I had them. I had them in Mexico, I think, and to me, I didn't get the prawn element to them. I got a little bit more. It was a very mealy kind of
ooh.
fried thing, but maybe I didn't have the prawn version.
Yeah, maybe you didn't have the deluxe version. So, tell me about how your time at Tommy, what was that like being at like the peak of being at Tommy in the 90s, when it was, real on the rise?
It was fascinating. I mean, it was a lot of hard work
Mm,
too. I mean, we worked many, many weekends. And I mean, hey, it sounds like I just also feel with everything going on right now, ooh, you had to work a weekend, but, um, it was a lot of work and it was so fast paced. And
mm,
I had been hired as a design director instructor, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I was just learning it every day. You know, I was like, okay. And thank goodness for Tommy and his sister and the other people around, because they were very patient, you know, and within this fast-paced world. But we got it done too. But you know, what I liked is that at 10 o'clock at night, you could take a car service home and you didn't have to pay for the subway or anything like that, you know. So that was the bomb.
Yeah.
And, you know, the company was it was exploding, you know. So it was just moving as fast as it could for the demand of what was going on, and also to put the demand out there, you know, to be the company that it was. You know, I mean, it was really trying to be on the pulse of so many things. And it really you know, you can find 90s Tommy Hilfiger around at vintage stores, you know, and I'm like, we always had to design a red, white, and blue group, you know, and it's like, oh, there's that denim skirt we did with the blue, you know, blue on the top, blue on the bottom, and the flag in the middle, you know. So it was, there was a very extreme graphic presence involved as well, you know, doing the jeans with the underwear band on it, you know, that said Tommy Jeans, you know. It was all there, you know, it was very very pro, you know, it was very pro Tommy Hilfiger centric, you know. However, then there was a more collection part of the brand that I didn't work on, because I was really just working on Tommy Jeans. And for women's, or for, it was called Juniors at that. And there was another group that designed the menswear.
But I think like Tommy Jeans in the 90s had like the biggest cultural impact. Like it really kind of like became this icon of like black music culture in the 90s. Like my husband, he's a music producer, and he specializes in, you know, R&B and hip hop in the 90s, and he is the biggest fan. He's a collector of 90s Tommy gear. But like, yeah, he's, you know, he'd be so delighted to hear about this. But, yeah, like it really became this real, like distinct, iconic kind of, almost like a movement, right? Like, did you feel that while you were in it, or is it something that just kind of happened, and like, were you conscious of that in the design?
I was conscious of what was going on within the celebrity world of it a little bit, because, you know, Aaliyah was in some of the ads. There was, I forget, some of the other young celebrities, you know, and who were a part of it. But we were working, for me, I was working so hard and just trying to get my hands wrapped around what I was doing. I didn't really know. I remember NSYNC played at a Christmas party, and
Whoa.
I think I was booing them because I really wasn't into the boy band element at that point. It kind of shows I really didn't know what the fuck I was doing, right? But
no, that's cool though.
But it was such an experience, you know. But they believed in music, you know, and I think the family was very orientated towards different types of music, and I think, and that was something that, like you were saying, really struck a chord. Was the combination of that, you know, Tommy loved rock and roll, you know, and so the combination of that with denim that has been identified within its rock and roll roots, you know, he tapped into that, and his family. And so they really built, you know, an empire around it.
It's like when the ingredients have such different meaning, and then when they come together, they make something completely new, and that is just so cool. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's such a good way to kind of phrase it, it's because it was like that. And then so I was there for about 3 years, and I just kind of burnt out, and so I decided to leave, and that's when I was like, I'm going to take a trip kind of around the world, but not really around the world. And I went to San Francisco. I went back out to San Francisco. I was there for a month or something like that. Then I went to Hong Kong, and then I went to Australia for a month. I went to New Zealand for a month. I went to Fiji for a little bit, and then came back, and that's when I decided I would start my own company.
Wow.
Which was called Heehaw Melancholy. And the interesting thing that you saying about all the weird animals in Australia, I had never heard, what is it called, a kookaburra?
Yeah, kookaburra.
Okay. And don't they kind of go, or something like that?
They laugh at you.
I was sleeping somewhere in Australia. I had met some people because I just kind of took a car and I drove up and... Do you drive up and down the Gold Coast?
Yeah,
or
up the East Coast, which is the trail that I was talking about, the band trail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What year were you doing that?
That was early 2000s.
Okay, so we just missed each other. I met this couple who were a wonderful couple, and so we traveled a little bit together. And I remember we rented this little house for a couple days or something like that, and I was sleeping so soundly, and I think this kookaburra woke me up, and was such crazy noise, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then I started thinking that my father was in the room trying to contact me through the kookaburra, and freaked me the fuck out. I mean, I couldn't really even talk to this couple the next day because it had weirded me out so much. If I'd only known it was the damn bird, So we were all a little uncomfortable with each other that day. But anyway, but it was such a fantastic trip through Australia, and New Zealand was so beautiful.
So beautiful.
And Fiji with the people there were just so giving, and as you were also back in Australia with the just the Aboriginal art, was so beautiful, and so it was a really great trip of self exploration, and that's when I was like, well, I'm going to start my own company, and so when I came back, I had this very dear friend of mine, Michael, and he was the one who'd given me the cape and the crown at Levi, because he worked there as well. And he lived in Tokyo for a while working at Levi's there. And I hope I don't get him in trouble, but we were riding a bus, and we had gotten really stoned. And we came up with this name, Heehaw Melancholy, and we thought it was so funny and amazing and weird and stuff like that. And so I decided that's what I was going to name the company. And it was right when Juicy was doing a lot of T-shirts, and there was a company called Michael Stars that was doing, so it was mostly knit tops, and where the business was booming, and they were a little sexier than just regular T-shirts, and thing different fabrications, different knitted fabrications. So I was like, I'm going to take that idea, and then I'm going to do a line of T-shirts and shirts that were a little bit more fashion than they were, kind of. And so I created it. I went, there was, you know about showrooms, right? So you go to, and so I got into the showroom, the Stephen Allen showroom, which they were really nice to me. And, I developed this kind of funky little line of tops, and I also sold some of it myself. Like I took a trip to LA, and I made an appointment at Fred Siegel. And so they came to my hotel room, and I pasted up all these pictures on the wall and stuff like that. And so all these specialty boutiques ended up buying the line, and I hate to, they they thought the name was really interesting. And when I told them, I kind of fibbed a little bit. I said, well, Heehaw was a television show back in the 70s. And I was like, and it was my father's favorite television show, and he's no longer alive. So that's the melancholy part about it. And I hate to say it, people would just kind of melt a little bit. They loved the story behind it all. So I had that going, and then 9/11 hit. And that really, was just a terrible, terrible, terrible time. And it put a lot of small businesses in jeopardy. And, and not only a small designer like myself, but also boutiques who were small, who were supporting it. And, I did production off the Bowery. So, that was difficult too. So it really made things very challenging. And so I kind of was really struggling with it. And a friend I had met at Tommy Hilfiger, she was doing merchandising at Calvin Klein, or Calvin Klein Jeans at the time. And they were looking for someone to help them with their women's jeans line. And so I went over there and worked at Calvin Klein for about 2 years. I had Heehaw Melancholy from like 2001 to 2000 to 2002. Then I worked at Calvin from 2002 to 2004. And when I started at Calvin was actually still under design, was owned by the Calvin Klein company, even though the jeans part was manufactured by a company called Warnaco. And so with, Calvin Klein, he's just an icon, he wasn't really there that much at that point anymore, but he was still there a little bit. Unfortunately, I never got to meet him. But at Calvin, at least when I was there, the offices were all black. You had black furniture. You had, I think they were black Post-it notes, and you couldn't really write anything on them with regular, so you had to use one of those silver markers that spread all over the place. And because I swear it was like a weird, absolutely fabulous episode where I brought in some colored Post-it notes one day, and people were like,
"Oh
what?"
My gosh!"
But what it was so fascinating was he created a point of view. And you lived that point of view within the office, and so. What a better way to kind of begin to understand a vision of a brand that is at the same time as kind of weird and hilarious. It was knowledge of denim and the execution of denim and how to wash denim and how to wear denim and all the different out of them. Really, it developed from what I was, Tommy Hilfiger was very streetwear, where at Calvin, there still was that street mentality because, it was, I got there after the Marky Mark Kate campaign, but it was still kind of about that a little bit, and the jeans made a lot of money for the business. But then the design portion got bought out by Warnaco. So we were no longer within the Calvin Klein umbrella itself. And so you sort of felt like you lost a little bit of the vision, or you lost a little bit of the family vibe that, of what you were a part of. And then and bought out, I guess, I don't know if it was all of Calvin Klein at that point, or they bought out the jeans part. So once it kind of kept moving hands around, I was just, and it was also a challenge for me too. There were lots of challenges, and I felt like it was time I actually took another break. And it's something that I really appreciate, that I gave myself those breaks, not only from after Tommy Hilfiger, but Calvin Klein, because when you work in such a fast-paced, crazy world, and I know you know what I'm talking about, it's so nice to take a break and give yourself some creative freedom and give yourself a breath,
Well, you need that for creativity itself. Like, if you just keep running like burning the candle at both ends, you lose your creative energy. It's,
and it's so nice to get it back, I mean, I don't know, you and I may be similar in that we can find a rusted penny on the street, and that is actually really cool. So we're going to take that home, and that creates the idea of a new snap, that, a snap finish, or, and it's so nice. So that's been something that was innate, I guess. I don't know about where we had a big attic, and when growing up, and in our attic, we used to play store up there because there was so much shit up there, of great-grandparents, grandparents, all sorts of stuff, that it was, it was a museum up there. So it was so fun to go up there.
So lucky. That would have been real fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it stunk, but, of like old clothes, but it was fascinating. And I think that's where my sort of delight for vintage came about. And my friend Michael, who I was telling you about from Heehaw, the Heehaw Melancholy partner, he was a big thrift addict. I mean, he grew up in South Pasadena in California, and I think his mother she really liked to thrift, and I think she may have even had a store. So I would watch Michael go through stuff and be like, how the hell can he do this? But little by little, you kind of pick it up, and it becomes, it
becomes a lifestyle.
And it's, it's almost a sickness.
Yes, totally.
You can't stop.
Because then you run out of space at home or in your office for all the stuff, and then you don't want to let anything go. And really like space when you, like my husband and I spend that's our thing that we do every weekend, is we go thrifting. So very quickly all the stuff builds up and you're like, oh, where do we put all this stuff? But that's where you find so much out about the world and like about history, and like you get curious, like, oh, like what happened then? Like, oh, like why did they make things like this back then? Or like, it just makes you curious. Or what through my husband, what I've also kind of discovered and come to love in thrifting is looking at different records. Yes. Looking at record covers is like traveling through time and space. It's so fun. Like, and the fact that like, you know, a visual image has to represent a sound of what's inside the record is like such a interesting thing. How do you describe a sound visually? Like, how did you get there? And but every single record cover is crazy and beautiful, and it looks exactly how it sounds often. Like,
yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
That is such a great perspective. I hadn't even really thought of
fun.
it.
Yeah. You know what I love is I love Hare Krishna records from the 70s, the late 70s. So obviously like the Hare Krishna, had a lot of money in the States in the late 70s. So they commissioned amazing musicians to like spread the word of love and peace and togetherness. And like there's one called JOB Orchestra. You can find it on YouTube. And there's one track called Govinda. I'm going to send it to you because it's a beautiful track, but it's mixing like East and West with soul music and like, it's just like an amazing thing to explore history just through music itself. So
it's
fun.
True.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been noticing during this time is that I'm listening to so much more music and finding little, like, I was listening to some Minnie Riperton the other day, and her voice is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so maybe that's where Mariah Carey got her high-pitched, where she got inspired by it. And I was listening to some old Blondie, Heart of Glass, and just the beginning song, and it's made me want to create a little a compilation of just parts of music that I find so interesting. Like I was to a Devo song the other day too, and I was like, oh wow, I love that part, and it's so encouraging.
Yeah, I've been listening to music. I mean, I'm so lucky that at home, like, there's always amazing music being played. But since I've been in Thailand, in lockdown with my parents, I've been finding, like, the news gets real, like, makes you real anxious and it gets real overwhelming. So I've been going back to just listening to music and music that, like, there's some types of music that, like, I'm really gravitating towards. Like in the beginning of the lockdown, I was really gravitating towards like late 60s psych rock and like real like free like LSD trippy psych rock, and that felt like that kind of brought this fire up in me actually that like made me want to be more active in like pushing for the most things that I think are important in life, because I had that space to pause. And now, like, there's so much sadness and hurt and but hope and trust and like there's such a melting pot of different emotions. I'm listening to more of this like spiritual jazz and like Hare Krishna soul music, which is really, really happy and beautiful, and it's just real happy. There's a real high vibe to it, and it just makes you feel real connected to like, so many different facets of the universe. But music, I think music is nice because it just stops you from thinking about stuff, right? Like, it's food for your soul.
It really is. And when you can just get in, when it takes you somewhere, really it lifts you away from, your floor. And, when you feel your body just start, like you were doing just then, when you just start moving you, you know, and it just puts you in a different space, and it's such a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, just hearing that you are a musician, you know, it's just, you know, I have such a passion for so many things, but I'd love to be a musician.
You should
know?
make a mixtape. You should do it. Do a little cassette.
I write a song.
Yes, do it.
All right, I'll see. I need your help with it then. But I do have a bunch of old albums.
All right. We are running out of time right now. I feel like we need a whole nother episode just to touch on vintage and then the later, you know, part of, I think let's touch on your time.
Did put a, can you see that?
Yeah. Okay. Let's show me these pieces. We've got another half an hour. So.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay. I want it to be kind of, I don't know the best place. It's gotten really dark, actually, so.
I like the sound of the insects outside.
It's amazing, right? They call them peepers, and they're the frogs.
Oh, they're frogs.
And they go into this wild chorus at this time, and then I swear, all of a sudden they'll just go quiet.
Oh.
It'll be, we're done.
Yeah. Show's over, guys.
Wait, that doesn't work.
This is good. Then you can bring each piece.
Okay. So this piece here, tell me if you can see it or not.
Oh, wow.
So this is an Egyptian, it's an Egyptian caftan.
For folks who are just purely listening right now, I'm looking at this black colored caftan with this gold leaf kind of Egyptian motif. It's not a print, is it? It looks like it's a print, gold leaf print with Egyptian motifs on that. Tell me about that.
I just found it at a vintage store, and you know what? I believe in your body having some freedom in what you wear, and caftans are amazing because it, you know, some people are like, you're wearing a dress, which, okay, whatever, you guys, shut up, you know, but it's just such a free thing to wear, you know, you don't have to worry about underpants or a t-shirt or hair pants, so it's just, and you move so freely, so this for me right now is really one of my biggest pieces of freedom.
Amazing. Well, for me, like, I love wearing dresses because there's nothing like at your waist, there's nothing like cinching into your waist, like you are so free. I love doing like hula hoop circles when I'm wearing dresses.
Yes. I swear I'm going to wear more of them. And I love just, you know, it's just, it's different. And, you know, that's the one thing that I feel about, which I'm sure we connect on, fashion, you know, trends are just, they just move so fast. The most beautiful thing about vintage is you make your own trend with it. Oh, like this, I'm wearing this old, this is a fishing vest. You know, it even has a tag. It has the license in the back.
Fun.
It says New York. It's actually a hunting license tag from 1973-74. And it's just a beautiful Nantucket red color. And, you know, you wear that with your caftan. You know, it's just such a quirky, unique perspective, you know? If you let vintage, you know, welcome vintage and let yourself do whatever you want to do with it, because it has got every trend in there.
Yeah.
You can, when non-stretch high-waisted women's jeans started coming back into play, it's so easy to grab them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And vintage, you know? I don't know if you're going to be able to see this very well, but vintage denim is really hard to find and hard to find cheap, especially a good. This I found in one of my favorite shops. I think it is a patch pocket. I don't think you can see it. Can you hold on? Does this help? No.
No. What we'll do is you can take photos of them, and I'll post them along with the podcast so people can have a real good look.
Cool. Well,
but if you can describe them for our listeners, that would be amazing.
It was a dead stock denim. I mean, the tag in it, because they were $10, the tag said, "These are fun." And but it's like, you don't know what you have here, because this is a great pair of jeans. It actually fits me. It's high-waisted. All the shape is from the inseam because there's no outseam. And it's just, it's like it's an old pair of nautical denim. But I think they used to do this as prison wear as well.
Oh.
So, because it doesn't look like, it doesn't look like it has a military stamp or anything. The stamp that there is a stamp that's kind of illegible in it. It looks like it says Louisiana State, or I can't really figure it out, but it looks like it was definitely some sort of industrial piece of denim, and I wore it to a party, a social distancing party the other night, and they're just like, the leg is just so beautiful. And that's the other thing about vintage, as you know, it's all, the shapes that you find out there are just fantastic.
Yeah, and also the shapes of things that have been worn to death as well, how that wearing of them changes, like, it might twist at the seam, or it might be stretched out at the waist, and that creates a new shape that is really incredible and unique.
100%. Speaking of that, this I didn't get at a vintage store, but this was my grandma. She went to China in the 1920s, and this is a beautiful silk little jacket, and there's another one under it that's orange. And I actually, it's so fragile. It's so beautiful. It probably should be in somewhere where it's really taken care of. However, I ended up wearing it to a Madonna concert. So embroidery is gorgeous on it, and you mix that with the jeans, it's just like such a wonderful blend. And then the t-shirt, it's just so much fun. Then my grandfather's pair of army pants, I don't know if they're World War One. Back then, and how they've lasted is phenomenal. This is one of those pieces up in our closet, up in our attic at home. But the weight, it's
very drapey.
It's wonderful, and when you wear it, it just flows. You're walking in a cloud in a way, the way it flows.
That's
and the details on it are so, it really is. And the details are so, you learn to study how thick a belt loop is, how a pocket was designed, what it was meant for, the stitches per inch on that fabric too. It's all so thoughtful. Yet it also seems so easy.
Yeah.
Run DMC shirt, I mean, kind of explains itself. So this mixed with all the other stuff is just great. And I just think they're badass. I'm so happy to find this at a vintage store. I was like, I mean, usually I look for things that are older for the most part, you know. And
But
I
sometimes
mean,
things
so
just
this,
catch your eye.
yes,
Mm.
and it's about how you mix it all
Yeah.
together. You know, this one, I mean, it's probably, I would guess, maybe from 2000, early 2000s or something like
Mm.
that. But you know, you also see the difference in where things are made. You
Mm.
know,
Yes,
so
for sure.
you will. A lot of the stuff I find is made in the USA, but then you start seeing things made in Mexico,
Mm.
made in Honduras, made in China. So you begin to see how things changed
Yeah.
as the as the fashion industry started becoming more and more
Yeah.
mass in a
And I
way.
just want to name that actually thrifting nowadays is so much harder than it was before because there's so much like fast fashion that's saturated the thrift stores and like your Salvation Army and your like flea markets. That you know, there's a lot of stuff to sift through, and things just aren't made the same as they used to be.
100%. And you know, it is a craft, don't
Mm.
you think? Because you can get very annoyed at a thrift store, you know,
Yeah.
because all the crap that you have to go through.
Mm.
But it's about finding the gems,
Yeah.
you know, and there's little nuggets of gold that you're like, oh, this is phenomenal. I can't wait.
Yeah, and
But
things speak to you for different reasons. Like if you're not all hunting for that, British Army Bombay bloomer or something. If you're hunting for things that are instinctually speaking to you rather than what you think might have high value or that other people might be hunting for, that's makes it an even more unique experience and gives a special angle.
definitely. And it's great to shop for others and to
Mm.
shop for business and stuff like that. When you're shopping for your own, there's a selfish, um, there's just a selfishness that is undeniable. You know,
Mm.
it's just keep giving yourself gifts and gifts that are expensive at all. And you're like, yes, I
Yes.
love it. You
Yeah.
know, this next piece is it's a Issey Miyake men's blazer.
Mm.
It it was made in France. There's a big B
Beautiful.
on it, as I
Mm.
also found a B pin for the last name Barksdale. But it is a jacquarded. It's a navy black jacquarded plaid, and
Mm.
it's kind of almost like a boucle a
Mm.
little bit. So you know, it has nubs in it and
Mm.
things like that. It definitely has a shoulder pad, so it's
That's
most
one
likely
thing that's still nice about making fabrics in France is that the machinery is still old so that you can use like slubby yarns and beautiful yarns and play with textures. That is kind of hard to do in many countries now.
yeah.
Mm.
It really shows the intrigue of the designer, you know,
Mm.
and of, you know, certainly now, you know, you can go someplace and you just flip through a lot of fabrics, you
Mm.
know, but to be able to think, oh, maybe this plaid came from something totally different, and then the way he put the two together of like, I'm going to put that plaid, I'm going to recolor it in a black and navy, and then I'm going to put it in this bouclé fabric. That's genius
Mm.
to me. You
Yeah.
know, it's so unexpected of
Mm.
and I guess that's can be the beauty of fashion
Mm.
too. You know, I mean, they really do become pieces of art.
Yes.
You know, and you know, it's actually nice to wear the
Mm.
fashion in a little bit of a less fragile way,
Yeah.
which is also great about thrifting
Yeah.
because you can kind of just play around with it,
Mm.
you know, and you know, you can wear it to a little party outside or something, and who cares,
Yeah.
you know? But you also know that you might be getting a little investment piece every now and
Yes.
then,
Yeah.
which helps as well, right? This Adidas, you know, little track
So
made
this is a
this.
red and white and navy track top. It looks kind of 80s.
Yes, it's actually silver
Oh, silver.
instead of white. And I think it is, this one might be, it's got a very old label in it. I'm trying to see if it's made in the USA. Oh, that's made in Germany.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, but it's a really sweet piece. And
Is
it's
it like a
polyester.
polyester knit?
Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm sorry that my light is so poor.
That's
but,
okay.
anyways, that's fun. This is I don't have that many more pieces. This is an old Brooks Brother chalk stripe blazer that it's Brooks Brothers New York in it. It's got a beautiful fit. It's single breasted. It does have some it has interesting dart shapes in the back. The label, and I will take pictures of it because the label looks quite old in it, which is really beautiful. And then if you wear, you know, as you get into the fall season, you wear it with your Adidas track jacket under it. You know, you can just fuck the whole thing up, and that's what's fun about it. This is very interesting here. It says made in the Republic of Ireland by Donald Davies of Dublin. It's 100% wool. It's a very light wool. The color is like a charcoal. It's a plaid, a large plaid, and it's a dress. I mean, it doesn't fit me, but it was inexpensive and it's so beautiful. I just had to buy it.
Even just for the fabric.
Yeah, the fabric is unbelievable, and the colors, you know, these hand woven wools. I mean, the wool that takes the color is really such magic. So they're almost, it's not really a plum color, but there's like a magenta. There's almost an Eve Klein blue in it, and this charcoal that just is such, and it's almost like a basket weave in a way. So it's really fascinating. It you know, just has it's like a tunic dress, right? Because it, you know, it has the placket that just comes below the chest. But it has a little bit, you know, some slight puffing at the sleeve too, which is pretty. I'm guessing, I don't know, this could be 70s, but it could be earlier than that.
It looks like the cut makes it look like a Margaret Howell piece. Like it does be great for a Margaret Howell collection.
And also there was a shirt with it that does have like a bow and has a little bit more of a puff sleeve that's in a very dark plum color, which is really, really pretty. I have that upstairs. I also get inspired by dinner jackets. So this is, you know, in robes. This, it says State of Maine. And then it's made in Morehead City, which Morehead City is in, I think it's North Carolina or South Carolina, but so State of Maine made in North Carolina. It's kind of an interesting mix, but
so luxurious.
It's a beautiful purple satin, dark plum satin, but then there's a very crazy kind of
Are they polka dots?
It's kind of like a scratched, like cross hatching. Right? And then there is an interesting polka dot, like a 2-color polka dot in it.
Almost like little eyes.
Yes, it does. And then it has this dramatic purple sash in it, which is really pretty.
So drapey too.
This shirt, when I actually had heart surgery a while ago, and this is a band called Firehouse, and I mean, it is totally glam rock hair. I mean, it's so freaky and trippy. I just had to get it. So funny. I mean, the hair on these guys is unbelievable. But
it's amazing.
And the back of it says "Hold Your Fire." And
that looks like something you'd find in Judajak market, which is, for those folks who don't know, it's like the biggest market in the southern hemisphere, and it's where you and I met in real life in person. Well, I took you there, and that is like straight out of Judajak.
It's insane. I had to go in for surgery prep, and they're like, what are you wearing? And I was like,
that's your power.
This is an old Yves Saint Laurent hat, ladies hat that I got. It's beautiful. It has really been strangely moth-eaten in my house, which gives it a really ugly look, but it's a beautiful shape. It's an exquisite shape. And
I love how it's so wide in the front and short in the back. It's this red fedora, for those who don't know. What kind of material is it made out of? It's like a felt? Wool.
Yeah, it's felt, yes. Made in France. And it has a beautiful like red grosgrain on the inside as well, which is lovely. Can't do without your Nirvana cap.
Yeah.
So
great.
Got a good old Nirvana cap there.
Wonderful.
And your tourist Venezia. Your, what are they called? Your
gondola. Your romantic gondola ride.
Gondola hat works wherever you are. You've got to push a gondola. And then I also found these old military blankets out of this beautiful dark green wool. And then it's United States Marine Corps. So where there was a patch, now it's just only the outline of the initials, and it's worn away, so it's just so pretty and beautiful. That's thank you
that's
for just
sharing.
A little bit of my collection.
Yeah. I love how varied and how everything has a story and a special meaning to it.
Yes.
A little window into your mind.
Exactly.
Well, look, we're just out of time now. Thank you so much, Spencer, for spending this beautiful evening with me. It's been I feel like we need to do another episode because we haven't even touched on like all the things we were going to talk about, especially to do with thoughts on the fashion industry right now, which is something I was really curious about, to hear your opinion. I don't know if 5 minutes, if we have 5 minutes to touch on this, it's...
Well, I did, it does seem, I'll take off my gondola hat when we're talking about something serious, but I think because the fashion industry is talking a lot about sustainability and the importance of that and the wastefulness that's been going on, and how much the industry has contributed to creating a poor environment. I think that things are going to change. Hopefully there will be more attention to details and the craft that this industry was built on, and the artisanal elements that this business was built on, and the beauty of it. You know, we can't get away from, people need to wear clothes, you know. I mean, that's why I'm personally a very big proponent of the vintage business, because I think you can really find, if it's a pair of jeans that you need, you can find them there. You know, if it's a pair of shoes, you can get them there. You just got to get over that. You got to get over the understanding that they're old clothes, you know.
But they're made probably much better in most cases than things you can pick up for the same price today.
Yes, and it's a learn. It teaches so much as a designer, because you learn how to make things very well and built to life, and that the details that go into it. So I hope, you know, I hope it will change. We'll see what happens. It certainly changed for me. I'm currently not working in it anymore, other than still having a passion for it, and we'll see what happens in the future. But I think if we can maybe reduce the amount of fashion shows that we're having, and it kind of goes back to the celebrity discussion that we were having, you know, it's maybe celebrities are a little less important, you know, and it's about giving honest pieces to honest, you know, for the good of the honest world.
I keep coming to this word integrity, which I think is important to move forward with. Integrity. Clothes of integrity, brands with integrity, meaning, you know, finding meaning from things, and propping yourself up to have integrity in yourself. Well, thank you so much, Spencer. I hope I'll see you soon. I look forward to chatting to you soon, and stay safe out there and enjoy that time in nature.
Thank you so much. It's so great seeing you too. And thank you for closing this with the word integrity.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye. Take care.